Hey guitar buddies, if you love Ed and you worship that sound, you should enjoy this video. This is a super nerdy deep dive into the Brown sound. So October 77, Van Halen go into Sunset Sound with Don Landy and producer Ted Templeman. And they start recording their debut album. And we have very little evidence from this period, like physical evidence like photos and documentation. But one thing we do have is a picture from Don Landy taken from the control room looking into the live room of Studio One Sunset Sound. This was October 77. So this is the tracking of VH1. And we can see we can see pretty much what's going on. You know, what's really important about this photo is the elephant in the room. And the elephant in the room is what's on top of the cab. Yeah? See what's on top of that 412? Nothing. The only time you don't put your amp head on top of your cab is if you're doing something non-standard with it. If you've got that amp head plugged into more equipment that won't fit on top of your cab, you want to create a separate stack of equipment, that would be the reason. You see Eddie's cabs at the back of the stage, usually 3 wide, 4 wide, with 2 412s. And then you pan to the right and sideways on, looking across the stage over at Michael Anthony, where the roadie would normally stand and pass guitars, are a line of heads. Usually 2 wide, 3 wide maybe. So you're looking at 6 or 9 amp heads in that zone. And these amp heads weren't just his classic Marshall. They could be, and they were various ones. There were Bandmasters, Music Mans, Sound Cities, other Marshalls. Why would they be there? You haven't got a distortion pedal, Ed, so you can't just switch to a Music Man or a Sound City. It's not going to sound anything like Van Halen. Some video footage, I think involving Mark Cameron, emerged recently. And it shows a load box built by Jose Arredondo, Ed's famous guitar tech. I think he met Jose in the early 70s. This was Ed's guy from right back in the beginning. And he built a load box which is purported to be exactly the same as Ed's. And it's kind of like a tower. I'll include some footage. It's a tower of resistors, huge, big, fat stick resistors that take the load of the amp. You're looking for an impedance load way beyond the 16 or 8 ohm load that a cab would provide. Because what happens is when you turn your Marshall amp up to full, like Ed did, the load doesn't stay static that the speaker is placing on the amp. That load actually increases due to the pressure and the heat. And so it will often end up at about 20 ohms when the amp is at full bore. And that's what Ed's load was made for, 20 ohms. So you've effectively got this box that will take the entire load out off the amp, so you don't need to plug it into speakers. And then it provided a line-out signal, which could then be fed into another device. It could be fed into a recording console. So you've got your DI with full amp sound. I mean, this is back in the early 70s he was doing this. The guy was visionary. So you could take that, or, which is what he did, let's scan to later period, he would take that signal and he would plug it into the harmonizers and the echoes, and then he'd feed those out into another power amp, a number of power amps, and he'd get a wet, dry, wet rig. Okay, so using our load box, we've now got a line out signal coming out on a jack lead, and that line signal can be plugged into another amp. Why? What do you get? What you then got was the ability to produce more overtones through more valves. But remember if you've seen the Sunset Sound interview with Doug Messenger, and he played Eddie's guitar sound during the Fair Warning sessions, and he said those harmonics just beamed out of the guitar with no provocation. But he said the amp was really quiet. Now, was he looking at the amp head? He was probably just playing through the cab, and he didn't even see what the amp head was. And this is my conjecture, is that his main Marshall head, providing all the tone, all the wondrous Ed sound, the Brown sound, was then plugged into another amp, which basically allowed you to get any volume you needed, but the tone would be locked in. It would just be the sound at various different volumes. Something that's hard to do with the Plexi, because the Plexi's sort of clean all the way up to 3 or 4 maybe, becomes classic rock somewhere about 6, I don't feel it sounds really like the Van Halen albums, even on 10. There's an extra sizzle, there's an extra sustain involved in those albums that just doesn't seem represented by the gain stage of a Marshall Plexi. But listen, I wasn't there, I've got no proof, and this is just conjecture, it's just theory, so enjoy it for what it's worth. But if it does get you closer to the Brown sound, well, you could buy me a beer next time you see me. Right, let's have a go at this then. So I've got my guitar. This is my 82 Strat that my dad bought me in 83, I think it was. It's got a regular tremolo on. It's a Callahan vibrato. Can you see that? The pickup is made by J-Lin Pickups. It's an Origin. It's really cool. The volume pot, well, the tone pot, and that's 250k because it takes a bit of treble off it, which is good because these things can be quite bright. Massively heavy body. Got to be the Northern Ash, which I think Fender used in 82. So, right, this is plugged, I've not got the effects plugged in, but it's plugged into this Bray head. David Bray's made this Coco 50 head. It's brilliant. I don't think that's exactly what was going on for Van Halen 1, hence this video, but I'm going into that, and then I'm coming out of that into the line box that David makes. I take a speaker, an actual speaker load off it, so there is a speaker with that sound. But I'm taking the line out from that signal and going into, currently, what I'm trying out is my Groove Tubes Dual 75 power amp that I got years ago. And it's amazing. And I think it's working for this. So, but you can use lots of different types of power amps. You can even go into another Marshall front end and just turn it down a little bit. More experimentation to be had there, but let me show you what happens with the volume. Right, so guitar's off, 1.5. Ooh. All right, so it's kind of Fendery. So it's kind of, I think that's an Eddie sort of funky clean sound. And the volume's on 2. Loads left in the tank. So if I go up to 4, but it's really got that kind of ZZ Toppy thing. So this is now on 7. So that's going up to 8 now. And then it really takes on all the harmonics. This is opened out all the way. Everything's popping out at this point. I think that's what's going on with Van Halen 1. Van Halen 2, he didn't reamp. It sounds a lot cleaner. It sounds more like his amp sounds. But essentially, from there onwards, he probably reamped again. If you enjoyed this and you'd like to see another one, you just need to press subscribe and then you'll see it pop into your feed. Okie dokie. Thank you very much. For now, see you later.